everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another episode of The Healing Home. I'm your host, Michelle, and today is a glorious day. We're getting closer and closer to the weather changing and really turning over. We have a lot of rain here today, but as it comes with spring, you got to take it because you know that it will help everything blossom and bloom even better. And speaking of blossoming and blooming, I'm so excited to have my guest today, Kayleigh Berkana, because she is one of my favorite ladies that I've met over the last year. And she has such a gift for being able to read people's astrology charts, to look into the stars and understand what might be going on and how this language really helps us to understand ourselves even better. And that's one of the things that I love about her, is because as I've been following her work and getting to know her, I see that she holds this practice of astrology on a very high level, and she has an integrity about her and the way that she carries on her readings that I really enjoy. And so that is why I invited her on tonight, because I want her to expand on her practice and her story and how she found astrology and all those things. So without further ado, help me in welcoming Kayleigh Berkana to the stream.
Hey.
Hello, my lady. How's it going?
Happy
Very
Tuesday.
good.
Almost said happy Monday. I'm like, wait, wrong stream.
Yeah, that's the Moon Day Tarot for you. Sinking in.
Word. Yeah.
Nice. So how's your day
hi.
going?
It's going pretty good. I'm excited to be here, Michelle. Thank you for inviting me. It's about time. No. Just kidding. I was supposed to be here in February, but you know what? Things aligned how they were meant to, I think. So, yeah.
It's very true. It all worked out, and here we are, and I'm glad that you could make it today because, things happen where you can't, just stuff happens. And so, as I've said before on previous streams of mine, one of the things that this podcast is doing for me is helping me to learn how to flow much better. I feel like I've been able to flow well, but as a Capricorn, being someone that can be a little bit fixed or stubborn or whatever, the podcast and the world of the internet has helped me to just allow things to flow a little bit more, and you have to just roll with the punches. And so we're rolling with this one because you're here today, and that's what matters.
Word.
Yeah,
That's
man.
What's up? Yeah, I'm so relieved and happy that spring is here. And honestly, the astrology of the last few weeks has been really intense. So I'm glad that we've got that really intense period kind of done with. I mean, just in time for eclipse season. We can worry about that later. But like you said, the weather is changing, and that's one of my favorite parts, honestly, of the years, when things start to melt and when things start to pop up from the ground. So I live in Canada. For those of you that are watching right now that don't know me, I'm up in Alberta, Canada. Our last frost date is in mid-May. So like May 14th to May 20th is our last frost date. So don't you dare bring tomatoes out before then, because they will not live. So we still have a ways to go before, it feels like spring here. But regardless, I'm stoked either way. So, and I can feel it, right? I feel antsy, but at the same time sleepy. Like, I don't know what it is.
I totally get that feeling though. I mean, our frost date is before that, but even so, like, it's just like a good lesson in one of my gardening books is to not rush spring as much as we always all will want to, because you end up rushing something and then you get a snow unexpected or, whatever. And then maybe part of the things that you planted are not going to last. So yeah, it's a practice in patience, but being able to tap in and feel that, feeling like that switch that happens. And then there's just like feeling the power of the plants and the seeds, like really reawakening is beautiful. So I'm glad that you're feeling that, because not everybody has the gift to be able to feel it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or at least they don't tap into it.
I guess.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was going to say, like, I have this discussion often where people ask me when I'm doing like a tarot reading or an astrology reading, like, do you think everybody has like these abilities? And honestly, I think that everybody has the capacity to develop them. Some people are born more sensitive than others. That's just a thing, or they're born into environments that force them to be more sensitive in order to survive, right? Like I think a lot of our stuff develops because of trauma, straight up. But I think everybody has the ability to tap in, but whether they want to or not, it's a totally different story. So
yeah, I would agree. I guess, like, as I said it, I'm like, no, actually, we all do have those gifts, but it is whether or not you take the time, because it is, it's like a muscle too. It's like you don't use it, you lose it. And so it's one of those things that when you do learn how to tap into these things and feel this stuff, it's like you want to like kind of keep honing in on it, So
totally. Yeah.
100%. But sorry if there's like a little delay, and I don't mean to be cutting you off. I feel like I've cut you off unintentionally with a delay.
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah. We're both working with subpar internet, so this will be great. It's fine.
Yeah. Party.
It's fine. It's fine. It'll be
nice.
Okay.
Well, okay. So with all that said, though, hey, for people who don't know who you are, though, I know you explained you live in Canada, but give them just a little bit of a backstory on Kayleigh Berkana. And also, can you just fill us in a little bit on how you came to find astrology?
Yeah, that's so funny. I just assume people know who I am. But there's people, clearly people in the chat that do know who I am. But anyway, hi everybody. So my name's Kayleigh. Yes, I live in Canada. I am an astrologer and a tarot reader, and I've worn many different career hats in my life, actually. I've been everything from a Red Seal welder, so like highly certified welder, to grocery clerk, like everything in between. Astrology, it's so funny. I grew up super skeptical, and actually in a Christian home, and was raised to think like, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, and like really intense stuff like that, or we weren't even allowed to watch Harry Potter or anything remotely resembling that kind of stuff, right? It was evil, it was bad, which ultimately I think a lot of people that are into this, that grew up in those kind of households, will tell you that kind of shame really weighed on them, because naturally, eventually I came to explore spiritual and occult ideas. So there's definitely been points where I've battled with that narrative and that shame from childhood. But so grew up super skeptical, thinking like astrology is bullshit, like, but at the same time would still go to the newspaper and read my horoscope, like, ooh, what does it say about me today? Even if I didn't believe it, just because it was interesting and it was rebellious. But anyway, so I was just living my life on one particular path. Was going to be a welder. Figured, I live in Alberta, oil country, I'm gonna make tons of money doing physical manual labor stuff, and I was making excellent. I was doing great, thank you, but that's not the path that I was meant to be on. Different events occurred in my life that literally took me off of that path. Absolutely, Alan, very curious, not satisfied with any answers. But yeah, anyway, different circumstances that were outside of my control took me off of that path, but ultimately I'm grateful, because it led me here eventually. So I kind of hinted a little bit earlier, how some people develop things because of trauma. Well, that's essentially what happened. Is different traumatic experiences occurred that I couldn't avoid them. They happened, and in my own healing journey, eventually I came to spirituality, which was actually a very big struggle, because I'd grown up with that, like, no, your Bible's fake, go away. So even just admitting that there is a higher power was a very big and difficult step. But then once I did, and once I started seeing that there's actually way more going on than what we can see in the physical realm, things started happening and opening up, and I started making grounds getting better, I guess you could say. Like I started healing essentially. And yeah, eventually it led me here. And I'm really glad that it did, because now that I'm at a point where I feel like well enough and stable in myself, that I can actually make an impact in other people's lives. That's really exciting, actually. Exciting and fulfilling all at the same time. So that's kind of where we're at. That's the sugar coated podcast version.
No, that's good. I like it. I mean, that's really nice, because I don't know if I've ever, maybe I have, even in some of our chats, but didn't know that you grew up in like a really strict, like more religious house. Well,
Yep.
okay, it makes sense. I mean, it does make sense why you honed in on this, because it's just like anything, when you hear the stories of kids who were brought up really strict, or they were really sheltered, they end up like wiling out at some point or whatever. And even if you weren't sheltered or whatever, you might wile out anyway, right? Because as much as our parents try and raise us right, we are individuals who have the opportunity to make our own decisions. So it's like it is what it is. But that's interesting. So when you started getting into astrology more, and you were like, no, I'm going to go with this and start reading charts and teach myself how to do this, how did your family react to that?
So what's so funny is I was the straight A kid. Okay, I graduated high school with honors, straight laced, didn't even try marijuana until I was in my 20s. Like, seriously, straight edge as fuck. So I had to rebel eventually, obviously. But it was so interesting, because both of my sisters, my two closest sisters, I actually have quite a large family. I actually have 3 sisters and a brother. But it's complicated, so we'll save that story for another time. But my sisters are a lot more open, and I've always felt like I could talk with them before my mom, right? So sharing with them, it was kind of like, just don't tell mom for a little while, right? Even though I'm an adult, and it's like, I can make my own fucking decisions, lady. But but still, there was still that piece of like, do I tell her? Do I not tell her? And I have not brought it up with Grandpa yet, so don't even fucking go there. I don't think
Grandpa
I ever will.
Doesn't like live streams. Grandpa doesn't like live streams, right?
No, he's actually very technologically handicapped, so I'm safe. We're good.
Nice.
We're good. But like my sisters were both very open, right? And eventually I just got so excited about what I was learning that I couldn't not share. So I started sharing little bits with my mom, like, hey mom, like, I just learned this, and this, and this makes so much sense because this, and this happened, and da 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 da. And she's just like, okay, Kayleigh. Like, I expected more of a pushback, but I really didn't get a big pushback. I think just at that point, my mom was just happy to see that I was happy about something and excited about something and taking care of myself and healthy and like not self-destructive for an extended period of time, So I have the kind of mom, I'm really lucky, actually. I have the kind of mom where she has said in the past, and will probably say again in the future, that it doesn't matter what you do, even if you're an axe murderer, I still love you. So, like, I'm pretty lucky, I think. Pretty blessed. She doesn't accept it, but she doesn't throw the Bible at me, so we're good.
That's good.
I haven't been disowned, in other words. So, yeah.
That's good. Nice. No, that's awesome. I mean, it is. It's like, gosh, it is a blessing when you have parents who can see it like that, of like, regardless, you're still my kid and I still love you, instead of the alternative, of get out of here and I'm disowning you or whatever, So that's awesome, because not only, I mean,
right.
I bet your mom deep down somewhere has some sort of inkling or talent with this art as well.
My mom is actually extremely spiritual. Like, she's very Christian and spiritual, and I think that those are kind of different things, but yet they're the same. And she has talked about different mystical experiences that she's had with her and my aunt. But it's like it's still God's work, right? And I've tried very gently to be like, Mom, astrology is actually kind of the language of God, and he's actually speaking to us through these planets, and it's up for us to kind of read what's there. And actually this passage in the Bible is actually astrology, but I don't push it very hard because I don't want to make her mad.
No,
But
that's
yeah,
a
she
great way
probably
of
has
saying
some
that.
yeah, she probably has some latent talents, but
I like it's like God's language, or it's his way of speaking. Because one of the things I've always liked about astrology, specifically chart readings, is how, it's like this is your very specific, you only have this chart because it's like you were born in this moment and you're unique and this is the thing. And so it is in a way then God's language of trying to explain you for you. Because to me, like astrology, when I look at an astrology chart, and I got this hit when I was we have a handful of friends that are also astrologers and love reading charts, and would print out our charts, and we'd have a hangout. We'd all sit around in a circle and talk about, what's going on. And most of us didn't know really what we were looking at, besides just a few core people that were actually studying it. And I just remember taking my chart home and like studying it myself, and was like, you know what? This is like a chart of choices, because you can see so clearly that there's like two paths, maybe, like that you could take in a certain scenario, and that we have the choices. I believe we have free will. So in that, right, that we do have choices. Yes, it's written in the stars. Yes, it might be destiny, whatever you want to call it. But when I look at it like a chart of choices, to me, it even makes more sense. And then it goes along with kind of the idea of we create our own reality. And so, do you have any thoughts on that sort of stream for astrology and chart reading?
I do, yeah. So the free will versus fate is a classic debate. It's a classic one. And I love what you said about your chart being like a bunch of choices. I think that's a brilliant way to look at it. So obviously you have no control, at least we don't think we do anyway, about what hand you've been dealt, so to speak, right? You have no control over your chart. However, you do have control over how you're going to respond to the events that occur now that you've got your chart, right? Now that you're in this physical body, there are certain things that are going to happen that are outside of your control. That's the fate aspect. But again, what you do with those choices and whether you choose to learn from those experiences, that is in your control, and that's where the free will steps in. And I like that, looking at it as like a bunch of choices, because what people tend to get tripped up the most about when they're just learning astrology and they're just looking at their own charts is you'll always have some kind of difficult aspects, right? And what I mean by that, for people that aren't familiar, is you'll always have something in your chart that sucks. You will always have something that fucking sucks, no matter what. There's no such thing as a perfect chart. And I have more to say about that even. But anyway, you always have something where you look at what they say it means, and it's like, wow, that's really shitty. I can give you an example from my own chart. I have Mars opposing Uranus on like a really sensitive axis. So it's like really explosive energy. So like I can take that and it can be a really negative thing. Or it can be an extremely motivating thing, depending on how I choose to use it. And in addition to that, there's always some nicer, softer aspects that act as like pressure release valves. So if you're looking at your chart and you're trying to deconstruct it, and maybe you're a little bit more advanced and you know a little bit more than just say your sun sign, and you've got some aspect that's like really gnawing at you and you think it's really shitty, look for a nice aspect that connects to it. Because often there's some talent or strength of yours that you have that you may not even be tapping into, that can help you deal with and work with this more difficult aspect. And then what happens is, as you work on that, that becomes a strength in your chart. So you might have something that you think on the surface looks like shit, but really after you work with it, it becomes a major strength later on. And then later in life, you know, as different unexpected events occur, those things that you worked on earlier becomes like a strength and what's the word I'm looking for? An asset basically to you to get you through the later events that come on down the road that are guaranteed to happen, right? If that makes sense. I'm kind of being a little bit vague, but I hope that made sense.
No, totally, because it goes along. It's totally makes sense, and it just goes along with how like our challenges are our gifts, and just like we were talking about right in the beginning, trauma a lot of times opens up the door for something greater to happen, some greater understanding about yourself or the world or people around you that you can then integrate into your life if you choose to, and apply it in a productive way, and then next go around down the road or whatever, you might be able to, have some sort of sense about something before it happens because you went through something crappy before,
Right.
and then you kind of are applying this stuff. And I think like that is a really, in my opinion, responsible way to be using a tool like astrology. And I think that it can kind of like there's thin lines, because I think astrology kind of can get a bad name just like anything can, because a lot of people sign it off right away. Oh, it's just horoscopes. Oh, it's just the thing in the newspaper that I read when I was 10 or, whatever. And it's like, well, it's just so freaking much deeper than that. And so like, can you maybe, for somebody who might be skeptical or somebody who just thinks that it's just like a horoscope, what you're just like telling the future, could you just like kind of clarify to somebody, what would you say to somebody that is in that mentality? Even though I know you and I don't really spend a lot of time around people like that, but we run into people like that. Or if you're just trying to like introduce yourself as what you do, you might run into somebody that's like, oh, what? Well, it's like hogwash or pseudoscience or whatever. What's something that stands out to you that just like differentiates this art from something else that could be looked at more superficially?
Damn, that's a good question. I had several things pop into mind at the same time, so I'm going to try and unjumble my thoughts. Hold on. So I have had this experience. Yeah, I have had this experience just recently. So on weekends, I've been setting up in a local bar actually to do tarot readings during the day, and and during the course of like setting up or whatever, bringing my stuff in. Occasionally I'll stop and talk to some of the regulars or whatever. And there is one particular regular I can think of off the top of my head who is super, super skeptical, very scientifically materialist, reductionist minded, very linear, right? But he's of Indian descent. So like East Indian, the continent, not like Native American. So I'm like, okay, I've studied a little bit of Vedic astrology and I can't help myself. I just start dropping like the right words. I'm like, okay, I'm an astrologer. And he's like, oh yes, that's very ingrained in my culture. I'm like, yes, I know. In fact, I studied Vedic astrology and started talking to him about it. And throughout the course of the conversation with this particular individual, I ended up actually guessing what time of year he was born. I guessed his sun sign. But not only did I guess his sun sign, I guessed a couple of his other interests that are associated with that archetype. So he was a Sagittarius, and I was like, okay, so I'm actually, and because he was in Canada, I'm like, okay, so you've traveled obviously, but like, are you interested in like philosophy and like stuff like that? And he's like, and then he showed me his ID, and it said what day he was born. He's actually Sagittarius, so it's kind of funny. And then he was like, he was really shocked, and it's not even that big of a thing, and I could have been totally off, right? It just so happened that he actually was a Sagittarius, and that he actually is really interested in philosophy, and he is actually interested in travel. That doesn't always happen. I have met Sages that aren't into travel, have never been anywhere, and that maybe they don't care so much about philosophy. It does happen, but anyway, really, it's about having a conversation with that person, because usually the things that the reasons that they have in their mind about why it's bunk, it's really easy to debunk their debunking, you know what I mean? Or explain it in such a way that it makes sense to them. But you can't convert everybody at the same time, right? Like I might have surprised or maybe shocked this person a little bit, you know, they might have been taken aback a little bit, but I had a 1 out of 12 chance of getting it right? So it's not really that impressive.
I think it's kind of impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it right all the time though. I usually get it wrong actually. So it just happened to be correct that time. But I mean, you're not going to convert everybody, and I don't think that everybody is meant to be converted. It's just about, I think, anytime you disagree with somebody fundamentally about something, it's about having a conversation and learning why. Like why? What is the thing that makes you think this way? Because that's usually where minds can be changed, if they are to be changed at all, is by understanding and learning why first. Like, okay, well, what is it about this that makes you think it's fake? And then going from there, right? Yeah. I think that's pretty much it. I think that's pretty much it. And I think actually I would love to study a bunch of skeptics' charts if I could ever get their permission to do it. That'd be amazing, because it'd be like, okay, what about your chart makes you not believe in divination or astrology or whatever? And there probably would be a pattern there, but good luck getting enough charts of people to do that, right?
Yeah, right. They're like, no, I'm not giving you that. It's like, dude,
why not? I thought it was fake.
Yeah, exactly. That would be a sweet experiment, I think. Like if somebody were to take that on, because you're right. There has to be a pattern. There's got to be something there that is making them feel that way. And it's usually the people who, it's just like scientism has gotten such a hold on them since a young age, maybe, or, whatever the heck their reasoning is, or they literally don't have faith in the world or themselves, or, whatever. Yeah. So then in turn, you're going to have a really hard time having faith in something else that could be bigger than them, and that goes along with, believing in gods or, whatever that looks like for you, gods, goddesses, you name it. It's just going to make it that much harder if they are in that lockdown, really.
Totally. Yeah. And I don't know. I think it's okay. Like, I think that it's probably a good thing that not everybody's into astrology, because there'd be so much more competition in this field, and that would suck. I'm just kidding. No, it makes life interesting when everybody isn't into the same thing. So I'm not interested in converting people unless they really fucking get under my skin. Then maybe I'll try, but because I have an ego, okay, I can admit that. Yeah, I'm not perfect, but
right on. I'm with you too. Is just the trying to convince somebody of something is like a lost cause, in my opinion. At this point in my life, I'm like super over that whole thing, for sure, because it's like, really, you're literally just wasting your gas that you could be using to fuel your own freaking fire. And so, you really do have to, like, what's it called? I can't even think of the phrase, but just like pick your battles sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Pick your battles. And that's why I like asking why. Like, why do you feel that way? Or why do you think that way? And then, it makes them think and, give a real reason. So totally. Yeah, I'd way rather Nicholas, thank you. Sorry, I just opened the comments. Yeah, I'd way rather spend my energy actually putting it into readings or studying or going out to see the beautiful sky and what's actually in the sky at the moment, stuff like that. So
yeah. And that brings me to something else, because, one of the things that I've noticed over time, Mario's noticed it too, is a lot of people we've run into, not a lot, I guess there's like a handful of people we've known over the years that are astrologers that really didn't have that much of a connection with actually like what is going on. You know what I mean? Like and
Yeah.
it's no fault of theirs. It was just like, we would ask them, so are you like paying attention to the stars and whatever? And we're just asking from like literally just a question, not even a place of like judgment or anything. And it was usually the case where they weren't, and this was
Mm.
years ago. And so I'm just like, interesting. You would think that somebody that is studying this art form would want to be paying attention to the stars. So how do you incorporate, what's your practice when it comes to just like tracking what's happening in the sky? Because I can't say that I'm the best at that either. But I'd love to know if you have like a specific practice that you like to do, or a way that you just kind of like keep yourself in tune with the sky clock and current stuff. And if there's something right now that you want to dive into, please by all means, because I know we
Cool.
missed a Moon Day Tarot yesterday.
Yeah.
So if there's
Yeah.
anything that you want to share with people, let's just dive in.
I took a nap yesterday and that was a mistake. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I love that. I think when people get into especially modern Western astrology right now, we're taught through charts. Most teachers will teach through the charts, right? Through the computer generated charts, which is fine. That's fine. That's a great way to start. But there are some schools out there, like the one that I joined last year, that teach you about what's actually happening in the sky, and how to connect that to the chart, and how to cast a chart while looking at the sky, right? Which I discovered for myself was really important. So a huge part of my personal journey has been connecting mind and body and becoming embodied, because of different things that I'd been through, different traumas. I spent a lot of time totally disassociated. So it became a really serious practice to literally get into my freaking body so that it didn't keep making terrible life decisions, essentially, to sum it up. So to find an astrology practice that wasn't all head centered and just chart centered, and was actually encouraging people to get into their bodies and connect to the real freaking world, was so phenomenal. And I'm so glad that I was introduced to this astrologer that I started studying with. But anyway, so what I do now is I'll use charts and look at charts all day long. But as soon as the sun goes down, or if I happen to be up before the sun comes up, I want to go and see what I can see on the horizon and what's in the sky, right? And I've started a practice where I try to, so one of the things my teacher taught me was to literally use your body, take your hand out like this, and trace the ecliptic with your body, horizon to horizon, and literally just trace the ecliptic a few times. And where the highest point is, that is the top of the chart. So if you can identify what star, what planet is there, whatever, you could literally mentally cast a chart. And so what I started doing that, and okay, actually, moon is at the top right now. So, okay, I know moon is here right now. Therefore, this degree is at the top. Therefore, this degree is rising, and then cast it and see how far off I am. And that was just one of the first ones that I started doing. Okay, Mars is maybe 45 degrees from there. So, okay, so it should be here, and then cast the chart and see how far off I am. So just little practices like that started really helping me connect the two mentally. And of course, because I'm a tropical Western astrologer, the constellations are not the same as the signs. This is a huge misconception that a lot of people that haven't studied astrology get confused, because the sign of Aries is not the constellation of Aries. So I have to also know where, what stars of the constellation mark the beginning and the ending of different signs. And I'm not completely there yet. I'm still connecting those two mentally, but that's what the practice is all about. So right now, actually, so on the western horizon, as the sun is setting, we have actually, so Jupiter just disappeared into the beams of the sun, meaning that the sun and Jupiter are too close together. You can't see Jupiter anymore. However, Mercury is about to be visible. So I'm really excited for that. And I'll be checking like every night until I can see Mercury. So as the sun is setting, look to the west. The brightest star you see is actually quite high up, is Venus. She's really freaking bright, very brilliant and beautiful, as she always is. But yeah, you should be able to see Mercury popping up really soon here. If not tonight, then maybe tomorrow night, depending on where you are on the Earth. So in ancient astrology, in Hellenistic Greek astrology, the phases of the planets were a huge deal. And this is something that modern Western tropical astrology doesn't pay a lot of attention to. However, the Hellenistics do. So I'm really glad that I started studying older styles of astrology, because it's actually very fascinating to pay attention to the phases of the planet. So whether they have just come out of the beams and been reborn, right? And then the energy of that planet is like they're brand new, or whether they're just disappearing into the beams of the sun like Jupiter just did. And it's symbolized by Jupiter as dying and going to be reborn again. That's basically what that symbolizes. So the phase of the planet is really important. Whether it's direct, whether it's stationary, whether it's retrograde, all has a deep impact on the meaning of what that planet in a chart, in a birth chart, but also in transit. And the symbolism is really rich. So I like to pay attention to that a lot more now. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's exciting to learn. It's exciting to learn and start tracking. So yeah.
Wow,
oh, by the way, okay,
awesome.
I want to bring it back to Mercury for a second. So because Mercury is about to be visible, it means essentially that this is a rebirthed Mercury in the tropical sign of Aries. So he, the messenger god, is bringing us a message of an Aryan nature, but because he's becoming visible, all of the topics and things associated with Mercury are like stronger now. That's how we would look at it. It's like Mercury is visible. He's just been reborn. Everything to do with writing, messages, podcasting, communications, merchandising, marketing, transportation, literally all of those Mercury fields are like stronger and strengthened because Mercury is visible. So yeah.
Oh, very cool. Wow, I love that. Thank you for running through all that, because I love that practice of following the ecliptic and then whatever's above.
With your freaking body.
That's awesome. That is so freaking cool. Oh my God. So yeah, I know you've started. Oh, go ahead. Just finish your thought. Or what were you gonna say?
So the teacher that I started studying with, his name is Gemini Brett, and the school name of his is Earth Astrology. He's he likes playing with words like that. But yeah, he has a ton of practices for literally getting your body involved and working with the earth itself, as well as with the sky and the marriage of the two. And he's really big on that. And he's got a ton of little practices like that where you're literally moving your body in order to connect to the sky. And I think it's friggin' brilliant. And obviously worked for me. So yeah.
That's so cool, because it's so holistic. That is so much more holistic than really kind of anything else that I've heard of people doing. But it makes a ton of sense that would really just like hone you in. Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah, and if he's demonstrated a few times. He actually has a ton of videos on his YouTube about this, but he's demonstrated a few times that if he's having trouble figuring out which stars are on the ecliptic, he'll grab a hula hoop or something curved that's circular, and then boom, there's the ecliptic, there's the stars that are on the ecliptic, and yeah, it just simplifies it so much.
Nice. Yeah, the visual can make like a big difference for most people, when you can do that. So yeah, wow, that's awesome. Because then I love whatever's above you. It's just so relevant, and it would make sense that there's going to be an influence like big time.
Totally right. And a big thing that when we are just focusing on the charts, just focusing on the stellarium, which is a freaking amazing application. I love stellarium. We are connecting with it, right? But we're missing out on the actual light from the planet itself, right? So when I go out to to look at Venus in all of her freaking glory, because she's so high above the horizon right now and so freaking bright. I'm actually receiving light from Venus. Now, whether you're a flat earther or a heliocentric person, it doesn't matter. There's light coming from that thing where the light originates from. Honestly, at the end of the day, it doesn't freaking matter. It's coming from Venus to your eyes. So you're absorbing information when you're looking at the actual planet in the sky that you don't get from the computer screen. So it's just adding that into my practice has been phenomenal for just increasing my own knowledge, but also just my own spiritual practice. Really, it's become like a ritual and a thing that I look forward to every night as the sun goes down. So
yeah, that's great, because it's only going to make you a better astrologer too. And as we go down the road and we start, we sharpen our tools and we hone in our craft and we find out what we're really meant to be doing here. It's like these little practices that we find for ourselves that start to click, like they can make the biggest difference in the world. And before I go to this question, because JLo has a question, but I just need to say that you, Kayleigh, have given me one of the most like in-depth but accurate readings that I've had, because you pointed out things that were in my chart when we sat down that no one has ever like said to me before. And I love your honesty and your integrity with it. And I just want people out there to know that if you've never had your chart read and you're wanting to, Kayleigh is a really great resource for this, because there were things you said where I was like, whoa, yeah, that's totally right. It's even embarrassing, but it's right. And that's okay.
Like I said, everybody has stuff in their chart that fucking sucks.
And then, for me, it's like, yeah, that's totally right. These are all things that have been a part of my life that I've had to work through, that maybe I haven't worked through, whatever it is. So just to gain insight in your own life, I just wanted to just throw that out, that Kayleigh has a way, and it's really cool. And hearing that you're, I know you've been studying with the school for a little while now, but just hearing that you're finding these little practices, it makes me excited for you, because I just know that it's just going to only like make you such a better astrologer than you already are, which is, you're already great. So it's just really cool
dude,
that you're working on this. So I'm very happy for you.
Our first homework task was to build a freaking sundial.
Okay, I remember this now.
He's like, okay, get a stick. It should be pretty straight. And you're going to make a fucking sundial. And you're going to watch that sundial. And you're going to perfect it. And do literal shadow work, working with the shadow of the stick of the sun to like, yeah, anyway. I love that teacher, man. I love him so much.
Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I love that. Doing actual real shadow work with the shadow of the sun. Dude.
Literal shadow work. Oh my God. So
that's
anyway.
Awesome. That's good stuff.
Shout out to you, Gemini Brett. You're my favorite. So yeah.
All right. So JLo wants to know if this will pop up. Okay. And I know that, so she says plates, but she means planets. Can you look at our chart?
Like what phase?
What stage I guess what stage our planets were when we were born.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. Yes, ma'am. Yep. So I could tell you whether, say, for example, your Mercury is an evening star or a morning star, and whether it is close to maximum elongation and about to station retrograde, or vice versa. Right. That just, it adds another layer onto the interpretation of your Mercury, in addition to what sign it's in. Like, for example, since we're talking about Mercury, for example, I have a Mercury in Aries, and it's a morning star. And they say that a morning star Mercury is quicker to the punch. They're faster to act. Because the morning star, you have to think, the star or the planet or whatever is rising before the sun. So it's like they're eager to the party. They're right. They have this kind of Aryan energy to them. And it's funny because my Mercury is in Aries. So it's like a double whammy of this, like, I'm going to probably interrupt you a million times and I'm really sorry. Right. Whereas an evening star Mercury is a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more reserved. Even if it's an Aries, they might still be very like quick to act or quick to speak, or a little bit impulsive maybe, but there'll still be something about them where they're a little bit maybe not doubtful or second guessing, but a little more thorough with the details, perhaps, or something along those lines. Yeah, so that's a whole nother layer to our personal charts that is important to look at, because it adds additional flavor to how and why those planets act the way that they do. So yeah. So yes,
Nice.
J-Lo, I can do that. She's freaking magical, by the way.
Yeah.
Girl, you need any more info? I don't know.
Overload. Yeah, well, that's cool because I still too, like, I know, I mean, okay, I guess I'll try and formulate this question because it just came to me as you're saying this. Because I still
Okay.
get confused when someone does say, like, your Mercury is in Aries or whatever. So, okay, so when you say that, when you say your Mercury is in Aries, we'll just use that example. So is that just like your like Mercury, the planet on your chart, is in the sign in the house that Aries rules, or how does that
It would
what
be
does that mean?
it would be in the sign of Aries, and then depending on what my rising sign is, that would change the house that it's in. So, for example, Mercury in Aries will it could be in one of 12 houses, but it's definitely in the sign of Aries. So in my chart, I'm a Capricorn rising. So Aries is my 4th house. So it's Mercury in Aries in the 4th actually sign. So did that clarify it? Did that make you more confused?
No. It does, because I'll just sometimes be like, when I'm listening to stuff and I'm like, all right, I don't really know what that means. And I know that I can just like research, I can Google it or whatever. But I mean, I have you here and I want to ask that question. So yeah, so it's basically like just more dependent on is it more dependent on your sun, moon, and rising sign when you're talking about those things in that term? Or is it just more does your rising sign matter more when you're explaining something like that? Does that make sense?
Your rising sign, yes, your rising sign always matters more. So since Mercury is in Aries, right? It is in Aries for everybody right now, transiting through Aries, right? Where Aries is in your personal map depends on what your individual rising sign is. So in order to find that, you need to know what time you were born at. If you don't know what time you were born at, then you could use the sun or the moon, depending on if you think you're born at day or by night. Your sun is usually a safe bet. You can go from your sun. So let's say, for example, you have sun in Capricorn. So if you didn't know your rising sign, which we do know your rising sign, but if we didn't, for the sake of argument,
yes.
Then from your sun in Capricorn, then Aries would be the 4th house. So Mercury is currently transiting through Aries through your 4th house. Does that make sense?
Okay, yes, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That does help, because I just it can be confusing, and I think that's why, that is one of the reasons why I think even astrology, people can sometimes get intimidated by it. I think even if it's that maybe they say they don't believe in it, but it might just actually be more of an intimidation thing. I've thought about that before, because I remember when I first started looking into, by no means do I study it or practice it, but medical astrology. And one of the herbalists that I really love, his name is Saja Papam. He and his wife basically are herbal astrologists and or practice medical astrology, sorry. And I just remember being on his website for the first time, and like he had like example charts up, and I was looking at a chart for almost like the first time, just being like, whoa, I don't, all these lines and these connections and this and that. And I know that when a lot of people, who aren't really well versed in or whatever can see it, and I think it can just be intimidating at first. And I think that there's like, that might be a reason why maybe some people are a little bit like, standoffish towards it or something.
It's math. It's math and geometry, and that can be off-putting for a lot of people. Like, I thought this was hippy dippy shit, and it's like sacred geometry and math, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah, it's serious
nice.
biz.
You're welcome, buddy.
Yeah. What's up, Chance? Happy belated birthday, Chance, by the way. Wasn't it the 22nd?
Chance. Yeah, Chance is a gem.
Yeah. He is a gem.
I was gonna say something. Fuck. I forget what I was gonna say. Oh yeah.
Sorry.
If I were Okay, so I'm really interested in medical astrology. I would love to go down that path at some point, and that's actually who I would pick to study with, is that guy, Saja. He comes highly recommended from a lot of different astrologers and people that are in that field. So fuck yeah. I was looking at his stuff not terribly long ago, but decided I wanted to get stronger in my like base astrology before I specialized into anything specific like medical or electional or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. No, Saja
Legit.
is something special. I mean, it's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. He was one of my first like teachers that I kind of really honed in on when I started studying astrology, or gosh, herbalism. So I'm like, oh my god, this he's next level. He reminds me a lot of Kyle from Tippy Canoe in that sort of way, where they just have this ability to retain the information so well, but present it well, and have like these really great epiphanies and thoughts about all these things. And it's like kind of in the same boat. And Judith Hill is another woman to look into. She's in the Portland area. She does a medical astrology too, and has worked with herbalist Matthew Wood and Saja as well. So there's like a little network of people that just have so much to share, really. So it's cool.
Yeah, that's so
but
badass.
Flat Earth Hippie's asking, can Kayleigh talk about aspects?
Yeah. So essentially what an aspect is a relationship between 2 points or 2 planets. It can be any number of degrees. There are some basic ones, some classical basic ones that are most commonly used. They're considered to be the major aspects, and that would be the conjunction, which is 0 degrees, where they're on top of each other on the same degree. There is the sextile, which is considered to be an aspect of Venus, which is 60 degrees. There is the square, which is 90 degrees, which is considered to be an aspect of Mars. There is the trine, which is considered to be an aspect of Jupiter's 120 degrees. The trines, by the way, when you're looking at the standard 12 sign map, all of the elements are in a trine formation, right? So trine's the same element, that's Jupiter, or the aspect of Jupiter, rather. And there's the opposition, which is 180 degrees. So they're directly opposite each other. This is considered to be an aspect of Saturn. Good old Saturn. Neither good nor bad. Yeah, and those are the main basic major aspects used in like classical astrology. Of course, you can break down the circle 360 degrees into a whole lot of different types of aspects. So you can have like a semi-square, which is half of a square, or a semi-sextile, which is half of a sextile, or et cetera, right? A quintile, which is 150 degrees. It's sort of this really awkward, weird kind of aspect that's difficult to kind of balance out. Yeah, so essentially each of these aspects have kind of different qualities to them, where one kind of aspect, for example, the square, the 90-degree angle, is considered more challenging. It's an aspect of Mars. So there's some kind of action that needs to take place in order to balance the natural kind of feud between these 2 planets, or between these 2 modalities out. And then, of course, things like the sextile or the trine, the more easy flowing aspects, they're more harmonious, where these 2 planets or these 2 modalities work really well together. So there's less conflict. There's just an easy flow with them, if that makes sense. So that's aspects in a nutshell. No.
Yeah. So, and then for anybody who might not know, the aspect is basically that when you're looking at the lines, correct? That's basically what the lines are representing the aspects, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. And I remember you telling me during our reading, people who have gone, what was it? It's something like when you see a lot of squares in a chart, you know that the person has gone through a lot. So it's like somebody that you actually might want on your side because they've been through a lot of shit. So they're probably then, as we were talking about in the beginning, they've had these experiences that have been challenging that could, if they've applied them correctly, make them a person that they might be able to, push you over to the next level or help you do the same thing or whatever. Because they've gone through a shitstorm, they might stand up stronger in another shitstorm. It's kind of how I look at it a little bit too.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah, if you're in a crisis situation, you want people around you that have shitty horoscopes for that exact reason, because they've already been through shit. They can handle the pressure, essentially. And what you tend to see, so one thing that I have noticed, so sometimes if you have a lot of really nice, easy flowing aspects, so the trines and the sextiles, and you don't have a lot of difficult, quote unquote, difficult aspects, the squares and the oppositions, it's almost like things come to you really easily. So those trines and those sextiles, they represent like gifts, natural gifts that you have, natural things that you're really good at, that you don't necessarily have to work really hard to achieve. So we often take those things for granted. So if you have somebody that has just a lot of really nice aspects in their chart, they don't have any really difficult stuff going on, you could kind of think of them as like, things were handed to them and they kind of took them for granted. So you can actually run into trouble later in life because you didn't work hard for anything. And then you're kind of expecting things to just come to you and flow naturally and really easily when that's not actually the case. So yeah, you want people around you in difficult situations that have already experienced difficult stuff because they know what to do and they know how to respond.
Yeah.
If they've worked on it anyway.
Totally. Because there could be, difficult aspects that they haven't, really integrated or whatever. And then it could be the opposite, maybe. I don't know. But, it's usually the people that have gone through stuff can help you out when shit gets rough.
Yeah. And sorry.
Oh, you're good. It's just the delay.
Okay. Just blame the delay, not the Mercury in Aries. Yep. Yeah, I think that we're always working on some of these things, and it's so funny because we'll think we've mastered something, right? We'll think this happens in life. And astrology is life, and it reflects real life perfectly. So we think we've mastered something until that thing comes back around again. And then we have to deal with that same archetype or that same pattern again. And it's like, didn't I already deal with this? I thought I conquered this already. What the fuck? Why is it coming up again? Well, you're being tested. No big deal. Just respond differently. That's all. Which is so much easier said than done, obviously. But yeah, I think there's certain tendencies and things in our chart that we'll probably always be working on. But I personally believe that there is a point where we can kind of transcend that a little bit and not be totally boxed in by this chart. And I think that that's something that I would really like to talk about, actually. We have a tendency as humans, I think, to want to blame things outside of ourselves. And astrology is no exception. It's really, really easy to be like, oh, okay, well, I'm a Capricorn rising, therefore my life's always going to be shit. And I'm always going to be dealing with Saturn and fuck Saturn and, blah, blah, blah. And I'll never do blank, blank, or blank because it's not in my chart. Well, motherfucker, guess what? That's not true. That is, the chart describes the conditions that you were born into, but it doesn't describe your whole life down the road. You have the opportunity to work on these things and to rise above them. You don't have to be boxed into a cage forever. And I think that, we just have this tendency to blame things on stuff going on outside of us that is absolute bullshit. So yes, I have Mercury in Aries, and that means that this, and this is true, but I can work on that, right? I don't have to be impulsive and interrupt people all the time, right? I can take a freaking breath and connect back into my body and ground myself and then speak, right? I don't always have to be like chomping at the bit to say my 2 cents. So I'm describing a battle that I have all the time personally, and it's pertinent to right now. So yeah, I think that it's just important to not allow yourself to get into that mindset of, oh, I'm doomed because of blank, when really you're given that as an opportunity to grow and to expand and to make something of it, rather than just fall into the deepest, darkest versions of whatever that is and just be like, oh, it's not my fault, I was born that way. Well, that's horseshit. Pick yourself up and let's go. Take responsibility for what you can, and let's do something with it.
Yes, I agree so much. And what's up, Sunseed? What's up, Rachel? Good to see you. I agree with you so much, and that's one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about in our conversation, because it kind of goes back to how I brought up my philosophy of it is like, this is a chart of choices. So yeah, you can choose to sink in and just be in this victim mentality that will literally keep you from all sorts of things in your life. If you're always blaming outside forces or it's something else, oh, there's so many crazy things happening, I just can't do anything. And it's like, well, you almost have to have to do something. I just feel like it's almost like, I think I've brought this up before, but it's like when there's a hoarder that has a hoard of shit all over their house, and the stopping force is them going, well, where do I start? And it's like, anywhere. Literally, the pile of papers that's right there, start there, because there's plenty to, you know what I mean? It's like, to use the excuse of where do I begin, to use the excuse to not begin. I mean, it's pretty common in our society, right? And so I think that, yes, something like astrology can totally be taken in that way, and used as an excuse for bad behavior or what have you. And so, because that's one of the things that stood out about you from the beginning, is that you don't do that. Like, there's a difference there, and you hold a respect for it. And that's what I really appreciate, because a lot of times you see stuff online where people are just kind of almost like allowing that behavior, though they're perpetuating this kind of victim mentality through by using this stuff as an excuse for something going wrong or whatever. And yeah, it's like, I do know that these energies though influence us like big time, and so I understand that there could be something going on in the sky clock that is literally bringing some sort of energy in that's going to make something a little more challenging that day or whatever like that. I do believe that shit's real, but to use it as an excuse to maybe not do something, to me, is always where I'm like, I don't know about that one. But I don't know. I try and just tread lightly too, because I know that everybody has their own way of doing stuff and they're all on their own journey too. So I just try and just, let it flow.
Yeah. I really despise the victim mentality stuff, and it sucks because, like, having been victimized is a valid experience, but you can't stay in that story forever. You can be angry and go through, in fact, it's really necessary. I fucking love Saturn, okay? Don't even get me started.
Me too.
Maybe I will get started.
We're like,
right? Yeah, good luck operating without your bones, you know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, having been through stuff that, where I was in the position of being victimized is totally valid, but I can't stay there. I have to move through it, and like, it's so necessary to go through the actual process of grieving and anger and actually experience those emotions and not bottle them up or push them away or pretend that they're not there and just skip straight to positive thinking, which is what I try to do. P.S. It doesn't work. Don't do it. Right? That's called spiritual bypassing. Doesn't work. But once you're kind of have worked through most of that, then it's about like, okay, how do I rescue myself now? Because I don't want to be a victim forever. And just continuing to put the blame outside of you always is how you stay in that victim mindset 100%. And I don't think that is a healthy place to be, or very fruitful, right? It's not healthy and it's not helpful. So yeah, and that kind of astrology really bothers me, because it's like, okay, yes, all right, Mercury's turning retrograde, so we know it's turning retrograde, all right, we know that, all right, we know what they mean when they say that, and we know some of the consequences for that, But how can we work with that energy? Like your life, if you're going to live your whole freaking life afraid of doing something because the planets aren't perfectly aligned, then you're not using astrology correctly. Um, you can time things to launch things so that, you know, the planets are the most harmonious way that they're going to be. But you also just, you can't stop living your life just because there's an aspect that's happening that, you know, might be a little bit scary or challenging. Um, and you know, you're gonna run into possibly some interesting things if you're trying to like file paperwork on Mercury retrograde, but you know, plan, have a backup, have like some kind of plan B or some contingency plan so that if something happens, because it might not, you know, it might not actually, nothing might actually happen to you anyway, right? Like not every single aspect actually plays out in your life in a literal way. Sometimes things happen and they don't affect your chart in any way and you don't see it, but it might happen to a neighbor or, you know, somebody in another part of the city or whatever, or another country even. So it's really important to not live in fear and be like afraid or anxious about different things happening in the sky. You have to keep doing your thing, living your life, or as Chance would say, just top hop it. Just go top hopping. If you guys have never heard that before, it's okay. It's kind of an inside thing. Don't worry about it. Chance knows what I'm talking about. And yeah, you just got to keep rolling with it. And like, what I'm saying is like having the foreknowledge can help you plan things so that, you know, you're prepared for if shit hits the fan, you're ready for it. But shit might not actually hit the fan, so don't stress out about it. Right. And, you know, just keep living your life. I don't know where I was going with that. So I'll give you guys an example. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you an excellent example. Okay. Last summer, there was a really crazy aspect. Okay. Uranus and the North Node and Mars were all meeting up in the same degree in Taurus. And it was like, wow, that square in a square to Saturn. So it was a really intense and tense aspect. And it looked like craziness. And that happened to be on a long weekend. So I went camping. I was like, fuck it. I'm not sitting around here waiting for shit to blow up. I'm just going to go camping. And I'm just going to make sure that we have, you know, extra gas and that we have, you know, our medical kits. And I'm going with responsible people that aren't idiots. And we're going to have fun and just do our thing and still live life. Meanwhile, I'm sure this aspect is going to be crazy, but I can't predict exactly what's going to happen. It's too intense or crazy of energy. And what ended up happening is there was a freaking tornado less than a kilometer away from where we were camped. So a kilometer, by the way, is smaller than a mile. So we were like, holy fuck. All of a sudden, like my cousin happened to have a really good cell phone range, so she was checking the weather stuff, and she had to have her cell phone on her because she was selling her house at the time. So so she was checking the weather. She's like, guys, I just got a tornado alert. And I'm like, fucking astrology, fuck. I knew something was gonna happen. So we ended up packing up most of our stuff. I packed up my tent, put everything into like the camper and the truck and whatnot. And it was eerily quiet. Like it got so freaking quiet and all of the skies were clear. And it was like, are we safe? Like, is this okay? Is it gonna be fine? And then all of a sudden in the middle of the night, there was this crazy light storm all across the horizon. It was just lightning. We're like, oh fuck, we're fucked now. And before we knew it, all of a sudden it was hailing, and it was hailing like huge, massive stones. So like, thank goodness we had already packed all of our stuff up. And one of my sisters had like left already with the kids, and we're like well away from danger zone. And it was too late for us to go anywhere. But we had all of our supplies, and we ended up being okay. The tornado did kind of mess up. It did land down. It did actually make landing, and kind of, tore some trees up, and nobody actually was hurt, thankfully. But there's more to the story, and there's some really funny shit that went down during that particular event. But like, what was I gonna do? Stay home? Now I have a great story. Like, come on. I'm glad I went. I'm glad I went, and yeah. Of course, it was a freaking tornado. Oh my god. Yeah. So It was a good time. It was
Yeah.
a good time. And we were safe. At the end of the day, we were safe. And we have a great story. So fuck it. Fuck it. Yeah. It could have been so much worse, but it wasn't. So that's the moral of the story is don't live in fear.
Yeah, dude. Yes. No, that's a great story. It's a great way of showing it because you have to still, even though you knew the aspect was there, you still went. You
I
weren't going to
still
stop
went.
yourself from going on a weekend retreat with whatever to do whatever. And
And
I
it was
think
great.
that's exactly. And it's like, dude, that's a really cool experience. Even just hearing you describe how everything got still and everything, I can like feel that when you say it. I can feel how
It
that
was
would have
so,
maybe felt.
it was
'Cause almost
crazy.
everybody can remember a time where there was the calm before the storm for, literally a storm coming, and you can feel that calm and it's real. No, that's beautiful because that brings me to one of the things too that I wanted to bring up is about, the whole thing with projection and how projection, in my opinion, and from my own personal experience of being a person who has had to really work hard to like keep my anxiety at bay because I would be projecting things or worrying about something or like thinking about what will happen instead of focusing on the future or whatever. So I know that there's a lot of things that can be used to project and like predict events coming and what have you. And so when you're doing these things responsibly, because a lot of times I'll hear some of this stuff like they're predicting these events and oh my God, this is going to be the big one. And it says it's going to be the big one because it's this, and this. And a lot of times, what I've come to find out is that those events, those times will come and go, nothing happened. And it's not to say that there wasn't energy that may have caused something, but the big one that everybody's ready for didn't happen. But then what I find is that then the person that was projecting that never comes back and reviews the projection that they put out there and says, you know what? Well, this didn't happen. So let's talk about that. It's always just like then right on to the next thing. And I think that this happens like rapid fire in the truth community too. And there's a lot that fear programming, that fear porn that's just pumped out constantly to get people just like really anxious. Because for me, when you're living in the future and you're projecting, you're literally you're more anxious. And when you're living in the past, you have a tendency to be more depressed. But when you're living in the present, you're usually more at peace. And so kind of maybe if we can talk a little bit about like responsible ways to maybe use some of these alignments and stuff to perhaps maybe, I don't even want to use the word predict, but just have foresight as to possibilities that could happen instead of just projecting like, no, this is going to happen or whatever, if that makes sense.
You know, I love that word, Michelle. Responsible.
Me too. I
Yeah.
love it too.
That's so funny. Yeah, I love that. And actually, you know what's so interesting? One of the, I think it was like one or two, maybe even three Moon Day tarots ago, it was before the equinox. Somebody left a message on one of my videos, being like, March 22nd, gonna be a major false flag. This is what's gonna happen. It's gonna be like this. North Korea's dropping bombs. Gonna be blamed on these people, and this is gonna be World War III. And I was like, here we go. And I'm like, I actually left it unresponded to because I'm still trying to figure out what exactly I want to say when I have that kind of a comment, because nothing did happen on the 22nd, right? I was just like, I'm just gonna wait and see and just see what happens because I don't know. There's nothing on the astrology for the 22nd that says like major event, but I've been wrong before. And I think that's a really, really good point, Michelle, when people do make predictions, that it's so important to go back and see why they were right or why they were wrong. Because that's how you become a better astrologer, really. But I mean, actually, I need to go back and do that with my my 2022 predictions, actually. But anyway, so that's an important part of this job, and it's an important part of being a responsible podcaster or a responsible purveyor of information, is doing the fact checking, doing the investigative stuff. Oh, hey Braden, what's up? with the puppy picture. Cute. Uh, and yeah, like literally that's how you become better, is admitting when you were wrong and trying to see maybe why you were wrong. So I'll go back to that exact same aspect, right? The Mars Uranus North Node from square Saturn from last year. I expected something way bigger to happen, honestly, swear to God. And it didn't happen here. There was stuff happening in the Netherlands at the time. But still, it wasn't the major event that I anticipated. Like I expected like something to literally blow up or something, like literally, just based on that symbolism alone. And because nothing happened, there was a tornado. But so like, okay, yeah, there was something that happened to me, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So because of that, I have gone back and looked at like, okay, well, when there are, say for example, because I was predicting explosion, I've started looking at like major explosions and what the astrology actually was when those events happened. And that's actually been something that has helped me calm down a little bit. I'm a fairly anxious person. I'm sure you guys can tell. But actually looking at some of the events and the astrology that occurred with those events and looking for the patterns and realizing that, hey, what I thought was going to happen is not actually in any of these other charts, was kind of actually a big wake up call. Like, oh, okay, that prediction was really wrong. So, like, why? And I think that we need to be doing that with all of our predictions, whether we're basing it on gematria and like predictive programming stuff that we're decoding in movies, or whether we're basing it on astrology or the combination of the two, or tarot, right? That's a big one too. Like if I predict something with tarot and then it doesn't happen, or I'm wrong, I have to see why. Like, did I have a bias maybe that I thought it was going to go this way, and because of my bias, that's all I could see, and I wasn't able to see that there was other possibilities, or I didn't want those possibilities, so I refused to see them, regardless of what way it actually was. Yeah, I think that is a big thing that we have to do. And to kind of piggyback off of that, I am really nervous about looking too far into the future, for that exact reason. Like, I don't think I'm that good of an astrologer to say, okay, on this date, because of this exact aspect in this location, this is going to happen. I'm not quite there yet. And I don't know how ethical that is all the time either, right? Like, we have to be really, really careful that we're not going to say something that will cause people more stress or more anxiety, and distress basically than they already have on their plates, right? So I have I try really hard to strike a balance between being real and being honest and not sugarcoating things. Like, okay, this is some fucked up energy, just so you know. But also, here's how we can work with it in positive ways, and here's how you can work with it on an individual level, because that's what's in your control. So I try my best to strike a balance with that, and I try to stay more closer to present moment rather than going too far into the future, because it's so easy to just get overloaded with information and then, like you said with the hoarder analogy, not even know where to start with something, or just feel so overwhelmed with everything that you can't even make a move. Just like, well, what am I going to do when those eclipses come and this happens? And don't worry about that right now. It's not important right now. What's important right now is Mercury's visible, and that's beautiful. So just focus on that for the moment. Just kind of to bring it back a little bit.
Yeah, dude, I love that. And I love that you already have like taken that into your practice of like going back and looking at these things, because
Yeah.
gosh, dude, I love you. I'm so glad. I'm so glad we went there, because that to me is seriously so important. And it's not even, I mean, you can just take it a step further, and it's just like you could do that. You should do that with astrology, but we should be doing that with like everything in our lives, I think. And you don't want to obsess over things and just like always like be rehashing or whatever, reviewing, but I just think that it's a healthy practice to even go back on other things that aren't even based in these predictions or whatever, and reevaluating how did we react to it, what was it, whatever. I can see you have something that you want to say. Go for it.
Yeah. I'm really talented at figuring out what the worst possible case scenario could be in every area of life. I'm really talented at that, guys. Like, really good at it. But something I've learned actually through my own through my own yeah, totally chance 100%.
Yes.
One thing that I've actually like taught myself how to do through therapy is, okay, yeah, that's the worst case scenario, but what's the best case scenario? And then
Right
what's
on.
most likely? What's actually realistic? And then oftentimes, I think that something's going to be worst case scenario, and I amp myself up like it's going to be so bad. And then it actually happens, and it's more on this side of the fence. It's way, way better of an experience than I thought it was going to be. So then I'm like, okay, so if that's how the trend usually goes, then now I make it like an active practice to challenge that. So I'm like, okay, that's worst case scenario. All right. But like, I've already proven to myself that it's usually not the case. So what's the other side of that? Right? What's the positive side of this as well? So I try my best to look at both and to not give people the worst case scenario all the time, because it's usually not true. Yeah, it usually doesn't happen. Right. So
Yeah, that's a good thing to put out there, because yeah, I mean, as Chance said, expectations influence reality in strange ways, and it's true. And
yep.
that's one of the things that I try and do, is to not have like any expectations, because I feel like when you have expectations, whether they're good or bad, or you're expecting whatever to happen and then it doesn't happen, the disappointment that comes from that sort of thing, it can be challenging in its own right. And so I think that having either like low to no expectations, in my experience, has totally been the way to go. And then also, it's also, if you did have an expectation, it's all in how you're going to react to whatever happens, right? So if you do get let down, trying not to get so let down by it that you're gonna drag your feet for 2 days. But then, like, if the expectation actually does happen, or it exceeds your expectations, trying not to get so in the clouds that you're just like, oh yes, everything's perfect now, because it's kind of not. It's like trying to find this equilibrium thing. It's interesting. Is this interesting balance of life that we find, and then these tools that come in that can help us do it, is we have all these little gifts around us at all times. It's just about figuring out what the gifts are, right? And how to open them and apply them.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's totally it. Trying to find the balance. Maintaining the tension between the opposites is a huge thing. It's a big practice that I've been working with for a while. It's like, okay, this isn't true, but on some level it is. Or I don't think that this will actually happen, but my body says otherwise, right? And like, okay, I'm just kind of sitting in between those sitting in that tension between those two opposites. And because I can't always predict exactly what's going to happen. So I think that's the hard part. Honestly, I think a lot of personally, I have to be very careful, and this is where astrology can become toxic. I have to be very careful to not try to use these tools that I have to try and control everything around me all of the time. And that's where you can get into really big trouble trying to control things, because then the universe is just like, oh, you think you're funny, and like send something at you. Like, didn't see that one coming, did you? Oh yeah, but I don't know, that's my own personal struggle. It's my own personal struggle. I think I started getting into some of these things because it was a way to help me feel a sense of control and power again when I was feeling neither of those things. And just being aware of that is an important key. Yeah,
That's
so
huge.
so now I'll catch myself like trying to control a situation by looking at the astrology and being like, okay, the moon's going to be here aspecting this in this way, and they're like, wait a minute, why am I spending so much of my mental energy on this right now when I could just go and ask the question and just just go ask the fucking question or whatever, just
Yeah, dude, that's great that you
Hum-
can catch yourself doing that. That's
humans are
really
funny.
yeah, we are. We're a funny breed, that's for sure. Oh my
Yeah.
god. Yeah, whoa, that made me think of something and now it just literally like flew out of my mind, but anyway, probably had something to do with expectation, but I'm glad to hear that you're able to kind of like stop yourself in that moment. Oh, I
Sometimes.
know. Um yeah, but and
Sometimes
we're
I
all
can
we
stop
all have our we
myself.
all have our something, right? Where you
Yeah.
have to just really always be working on it. But how
Yeah.
divination, so in my opinion, how divination can be used in this all forms of divination can be used in the form of what we're talking about right now of like you're feeling out of control in your life, so you think that doing multiple tarot readings in a day is going to give you some sort of insight that's going to change your situation at hand. Not to say that tarot doesn't give insight, not to say that I don't love tarot, not to say that I have never done a reading when I'm like, what should I do here? And I'm not discouraging that, but I just find that there's like a limit. You have to know that like you could do all the divination in the world to get the answer that you want to get, but you're not going to get the answer you want until you do the thing that you know you need to do. And no type of divination is going to do the thing for you. It might guide you or point you or give you that insight, or maybe it'll give you the motivation to do the thing, right? So that's why I never discourage people to use these sort of means to gain insight, but it's just like to have a balance with it. I think like that's the main thing, is just with anything in life, is like finding a balance of where it's healthy and where it's not healthy. And when you can feel yourself, maybe, as you said, using this as a means to maybe try and figure out the answer to the question that you could literally just go and ask the person, even if it's going to be a hard
Yeah.
question, you know?
Yeah.
So-
Every girl out there knows exactly what I'm talking about.
oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, fuck, what was I gonna say? I mean, I've definitely sat down with my tarot cards when I was like emotionally upset about something and tried really hard to get a specific kind of reading, but but usually my cards troll me at that point. Like, I don't know whether it's me and my spirit guides or spirit in general, or just I have no idea, but whatever it is, I cannot get the answer that I want if I'm really emotionally attached or invested or upset. Like if I'm not grounded and I go to sit down with my cards, they're going to troll me every time. Every time. Or they give me the exact answer that I really don't want, but I know I really need. So then I have definitely gone to other people for tarot readings while still in that state, and I get the exact same fucking answer from them that I didn't want, but I really needed to hear. And like that's just how it goes for me. Yeah, it's like I'm not allowed. I don't know. This is just me. It's like I'm not allowed to fuck around. Like that's just how it feels. I'm not allowed to fuck around. Yeah.
Totally get
Oh,
that feeling too. Oh,
you were
all right.
you were muted.
I'm
Now you're
back.
not. You're
Okay,
good.
no, I'm not muted.
Yep.
No, I understand that. I get that feeling too of just it's like, you know the answer already. And you're on this path, and so it means you're on the right path. And that's something that Mario has talked to me about, and that he's noticed too when he does tarot readings of people asking the question like, am I on the right path? And his answer being, yeah, because this is the path you're on. Because you're on your path, you're on the right path. And just sometimes hearing that can like really help. It helps me. It can help the person that's maybe even asking you that question, of just being like, wow, yeah, actually, I didn't even think about that, and because I'm on this path, I should probably just keep going. And then the answers are going to come as I just continue to go, as life does. You don't want to stop. I just keep always reminding myself of like, whatever's going on, just don't stop. Just don't stop. You just have to keep going. And that can be hard sometimes. And there's all sorts of emotional factors that can play into something to make something extra challenging. But if you can kind of just keep enough motivation to just not stop doing what you're doing on a positive level, like the positive things that you're trying to do and positive things you're trying to change, I think like you're just going to be that much better off for it in the long run, and not feeling that you have a dependency upon maybe some of these divination tools that we're talking about to give you the answer, right? You'll have more faith and more trust in your own self and your own abilities to find the answer by just doing. by taking action.
Yeah. And honestly, 90% of my astrology readings, when they ask a question related to like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Or what should I be working towards right now? Like say with career or whatever the case may be, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, well, you're already doing exactly what you're meant to be doing right in this moment. Maybe you could focus right here for a little bit and maybe work on like this for a little bit, but otherwise you're already on the right path, dude. And they, from what I can tell anyway, usually just need to hear that kind of validation, and that's huge. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I'm not surprised that that's the approach you can take with people. And yeah, most of the time it really opens a door for people just to hear that, because a lot of people don't have these types of perspectives around them, because these are all the things that we're not really taught in conventional schools or what have you. Our parents usually aren't taught these types of things. So when you can come across people that have these extra insights, it can like really go a long way. And so, now that we're coming up, we've been going an hour and a half, so we've been rolling. This has gone really fast, and this is awesome. But one of the things I want to make sure to talk about you and other things that you do is that you're a leather worker, and you've shared a few of the pieces that you've made just on our Telegram chats that we all have together and stuff. And I'm always blown away with your like precision and your attention to detail. And so, can you talk a little bit about just your path towards becoming a leather worker and how long you've been doing that? And also, have you found any crossover with that, being a leather worker and in your astrology chart? Have you seen any aspects in your chart that have pointed to the fact that, oh, yeah, that makes sense that I would, be attracted to welding or be attracted to leather crafting?
Yeah. So I picked up leather, working with leather actually. It's kind of a weird, this is one of the points in my life where I didn't expect to be going down a certain path, and then it opened and I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. um I had friends that owned a shop in town that sold swords, like not stainless steel showpieces, real high carbon steel fucking blades. And they also had a person that worked in the shop that was making small knives at the time. Now he's graduated to making actual swords, which is freaking badass, but he was like an actual blacksmith. And he was the leather worker as well at the time. So I was actually going in there and hanging out because I didn't have a whole lot to do at the moment. And I was actually trying to recover from doing drugs because I was not sober at the time. I was still using. And the blacksmith at the time had been 9 years sober from what I was trying to get off of. So as I was going in there and I was just hanging out, I'm like, hey, what's up? They're like, if you need to talk, if you need to be somewhere where you're not going to get in trouble, you can hang out here. Also, we have a bunch of scraps if you want to play. So I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. So he showed me a few, like some really basic leatherwork stuff for putting art into the leather. And I've always been artistically inclined. So that was the easy part. What was the hard part is I had just come from welding where I was hitting metal with a metal hammer going smash, smash, smash. And now I had to hit this teeny tiny little leather stamp into the leather with like a rubber mallet. And he's like, tap, tap, tap. And I was like, smash, smash, smash. He's like, no, 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 no. Tap, tap, tap. So that was a fun learning curve going from like working with metal to working with leather. But anyway, it turned out I was pretty good. So then they started paying me. They're like, yeah, I want to make stuff like all the time. Like, we'll pay you money to show up and man the shop and work. So I was like, sweet. So I landed a job just by literally showing up every day. So that's kind of fun. But anyway, so yeah, so started doing leather work and learned some really basic skills like how to make like a sheath for different size knives and different shaped knives, and sheaths for axe heads and stuff like that, and like little bags and really simple like small stock items that were actually historically accurate because the shop, they specialized in like medieval era things, basically swords, right? So but specifically like European. So anyway, learned a few skills, and was working with them for a little while, and eventually I needed to leave to do other stuff, but I took those skills with me, obviously. So yeah, so that was in 2018, like the end of 2017, all of 2018. No, 2018 and 2019. Sorry, 2018 and 2019 I was there. And then end of 2019 I left, and then 2020 happened, and that's the thing. But anyway, I started
Dun, dun,
buying some of my
dun.
own dun dun dun. Yeah, so I started buying some of my own tools and stuff to do it at home, because it ended up being a really lovely outlet for me, where I was actually really enjoying making things, and putting the art into it. Honestly, that's my favorite step, but it's like the least important step. But anyway, yeah, so then just started making stuff at home for myself. So I made like a line of 12 wallets with the zodiac signs and like some symbolism with them and stuff like that, and like the ruling planet on the back, because I'm a nerd, and just little things like that. And I made like an axe sheath for myself, like just really simple small stuff. I've made like some really nice like dice bags. You know, I made myself a little backpack, like little things like that. I definitely wouldn't say I'm pro level or anything like that, but I've got some nice basic skills, and I actually really enjoy the process of hand stitching. For some reason, it's really soothing for me. Now, where that stuff is in my chart, I like this question. Art is in my chart in a very real way in multiple places. So first of all, I have my sun in the sign of Taurus. Okay, so sun, regardless of what house it's in, has a lot to do with what feeds us and what feeds our vitality. And Taurus is a natural earth goddess, very sensual sign. So working with natural materials and doing artistry is definitely very Taurian in nature. Also, like if I were, as I've been getting really into herbs and stuff too, that's very Taurus in nature as well. So anyway, that's part of it. My Venus, so the planet that rules Taurus, but is also responsible for like beauty and art and stuff like that, is in my 6th house in Gemini. So Gemini is, you could say Gemini is associated with hands and hand skills, but specifically the 6th house has to do with like your work ethic. 10th house is like where you're striving to go, what your ultimate career is, and like your public perception. But 6th house is the mundane daily day-to-day tasks. So having the planet of art and beauty in the 6th house of like your daily day-to-day mundane tasks is definitely like I should be doing art. In addition to that, Venus aspects by sextile my point of fortune, which is like, this is how one of the things that can help you make money. So literally it's aspecting Venus, so it's like I should be selling art. And then they aspect my MC, which is the 10th house cusp. So literally I should be selling art. And also in addition to that, I've got Neptune in the 1st house with my moon. Neptune is a very, it can be, again, and this is one of those things where there's worst case and best case scenario. With Neptune, it can be like fucking drugs and escapism, which I've already alluded to working through that myself, but also spirituality and artistry and like working with, channeling different energies into the physical realm, because it's in Capricorn especially. So there's a few things in my chart that's like I should be working with art. And the leather itself, I think the Taurus sun makes a lot of sense, but also the Cap rising too. So with Capricorn can often be talking about traditional stuff. So old things is a very Capricorn kind of theme, responsibility, 3D physical reality, stuff like that. So like the fact that I learned art, or learned not art, but learned leatherwork in a shop that was doing like traditional reenactment type stuff is kind of funny to me, because that's very Capricorn. It's one of the most Capricorn places I can think of.
That is so fitting for you. Like, it's
I
so
know,
fitting.
it's fucking funny.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
Dude,
a thing.
That's beautiful. I love the fact
Yeah.
that you found the leather worker blacksmith during the time where you were trying to get clean, and they were on the same,
Yeah.
they saw those signs in you. God, that is so beautiful, Kayleigh. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, and like honestly, I'm so grateful for that time and that place. Like that was a very necessary step on my journey. And they were so supportive of me while I was trying to get my shit figured out. Like, wow, I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity. And then I was able to learn and take some skills from that time too, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow, that's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Polymathing is asking if you have ever worked with, and I think I know the answer to this, if you've worked with
Amadou.
the Amadou, the leathery mushroom.
No, I haven't. That sounds really cool.
Because I
Yeah, I
remember
would
you
love
bringing
to,
up
but I haven't, no.
some kind of mushroom leather something in the
Yeah.
chat like months ago. But yeah, okay. So that's just a type of mushroom that people, it's like a leather substitute, or
Cool.
is that the
Yeah, I'm
deal?
not
I'm not
sure.
sure.
We
Okay.
gotta look it
That's
up.
cool.
I know there I know there is leather mushroom. Like, I know there is leather made from mushroom. I've never worked with it. There's a few different kinds of, non-meat leathers. There's, a leather made from, like, the waste, grape skins from winemaking. Also, there's another one being developed. I don't know where it is in its developmental stage, but, the leaves from pineapples. Oh yeah, I make
Dang.
belts. Belts are fun. But yeah, the leaves of pineapples. Now, I
Wow.
have read that those two processes to make those two plant materials into leather is actually just as toxic as our modern tanning for like flesh. So I don't know if it is actually any better for the environment or not, but there's alternatives out there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Very
but
cool.
but personally, so where I live, we have a very healthy cattle industry, as well as a very large wild game industry. And a lot of the time, those hides are just thrown out or thrown into the compost. So there's no freaking reason why I should be getting leather from any other freaking country in the world. It should be coming from Alberta, because it's here. The raw materials here. It's just we don't have enough people making it into a usable material. And I briefly attempted. I still have hides. I briefly attempted to make some leather myself. It is a lot of freaking work, and it's so freaking stinky. But maybe one day. Maybe one
Yeah.
day I'll try that again. But yeah,
What
when
is
I got
that
time.
in a nutshell? What does that process even look like? Trying to make your
Oh
own leather.
God.
Just a nutshell. That's so funny. I don't want to trigger you your past memories of
Traumatized. No, no, no. So
traumatized leather.
in
That's
a nutshell, in a nutshell, you have the hide, okay? And it depends on what you want to do with it. Like if you want it to be like a brain tan, so it's like soft, um and you can't put any designs in it, but it's good for clothing. That's one way. If you want to make it so that it's like shiny on the outside, so that the hair is removed, but the grain is not, so you can put designs into it, that's another way. So like it kind of depends on what you want to do and what you want the end product to be. I tried like traditional brain tanning. So to do that, first you need the proper you need the proper what the fuck is it called? Stand thing, I guess, and the right kind of knife. But it can't be too sharp. If it's too sharp, you'll cut through the hide, and that's no good. So basically, a big fucking dull knife. So first, you scrape the flesh off of the inside. After it's been soaking in water, if it's been frozen, or you could do it fresh, and then it has to soak in essentially like a lye solution. There's a couple ways to make it, but essentially it's got to soak, and that chemical gets into it and gets everything loose. And then you take it out. You got to rinse it a few times. Then you got to take the hair off and the grain off. So the grain, fleshing post. Thank you. The grain is essentially in between the hair and the actual flesh. But you need it. You need it off if you want it to be a soft brain tanned leather. So anyway, you got to take the grain off, and then you got to flip it back over and take another layer off the inside. Oh my god, it's so much. And then it has to essentially start drying. But in order to do that, you can't let it dry so it's stiff. So you have to keep working it. And then there's like after all of that is done, then there's like the smoking process. Oh god, I even skipped some steps. Fuck. See, there's so much to it.
yeah, you're good. Yeah, you're good.
there's I forgot the most essential step where you have to take the brain of the animal and like basically turn it into essentially a stew. So you take the fat of the brain and rub it back into the flesh of the fucking animal after all of those layers have been taken off, and then it has to dry, but you can't let it dry or it gets like all at once or get stiff. So you gotta like work it and move it. Oh my god, it's so much work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work,
Well, now
and it's stinky.
I
Ugh,
believe it, man.
so
Yeah,
stinky.
you're dealing with
It's
like
dead
flesh,
animal.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But dude, I mean, it puts into perspective and it makes you appreciate, you know, sometimes you see leather goods and it's like, whoa, that's really expensive, but it's for a reason. You know, it's like just
Yeah.
hearing that alone. And I know that's a very, you know, nutshell, bare bones sort of process that you just overlaid for us. But I'm curious. I'm glad you did it because yeah, I mean, I should actually just look that up online and see because I've always been curious about the process of it, but I've never really looked into it. But you know,
It's
it's
so
cool that you
gross,
tried.
but it's cool. Yeah, it's cool that I tried. I would really, really freaking love to make some stuff with leather that I made myself. So that is on my list. And like for the reasons I already stated, I live in a place where I don't have to buy hide. I can literally just get it from fucking anywhere. It's just the labor and the time that it takes to turn that hide into something useful. Will be that's the tricky part. So and it has to be in a place where I'm not going to get complaints from the neighbors. So that's future goals for future acreage Kayleigh when she's got her own place out of the city.
Yeah, there you go. See, goals. Well, now I'm done the brain canning research pit. Nice.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
Actually, okay, I'll tell you guys about this really cool website I found. So there's this
Sweet.
guy on YouTube, and he's got a website called Skill Cult, and on his website he has a ton of free resources. Some of those free resources are like old school recipes for different things, like all kinds of different things, like different kinds of inks and different kinds of dyes and different kinds of stuff, and it's like old books. So they're free to download those ones anyway, because they're out of copyright now. So Skill Cult, but I forget if it's .com or whatever, but I'm sure you guys can find it.
Nice.
I've planted the seed. Have fun.
Nice.
Yeah,
And then
and it's fun. It's nice. It's fun because the recipes are like oh god. Like ash of lime or stuff like that, and it's a really weird way, but the old way to describe like different compounds that we know by totally different names now. So anyway, I also went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, if you can't tell. Yeah.
I always love coming across old recipes where they're using different words or the language is all just like old timey and stuff. Yeah, it's cool. It's super fun. Well, that's awesome. Hey, thank you so much for getting into that. And, you know, as we're rounding up to almost 2 hours, I want you to have an opportunity to just give yourself a little bit of a plug. Tell people where they can find you. I know that you've recently just finished creating your own beautiful website. So all of Kayleigh's links are down in the description for anyone who's interested in finding her. But the floor is yours, my lady, to shout yourself out and let people know where they can find you, and specifically if they want to get some chart readings from you too.
Yeah, so my website just launched. It's KayleighBerkana.com. So Kayleigh is my name spelled on here, and then Berkana is BERKANA.com. It should be up and running to do bookings through there. My calendar's in there. All that stuff is hooked up, ready to go. And if you have any questions, like you're not sure if a natal chart reading is right for you or anything like that, you can email me or submit a form right on the website there. And my email is KayleighBerkana@pm.me. I also do, so every Monday night, except for last night, I had a nap instead. Every Monday night, I do like a 3-hour live stream talking about the astrology of the week upcoming. And then I'll talk about the astrology for each sign. So it's based on your rising sign, not your sun sign. But if you don't know your time of birth, sun sign is fine. But yeah, I'll go through each sign and I'll pull some tarot cards as well, just for fun to kind of flesh out the reading. Occasionally, I'll bring on guests to pull cards with me. Rachel has appeared, Chance has appeared, Michelle has appeared. That was really fun, actually. And actually, I would love to have you back for Taurus, so we'll talk about that off screen.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. It's Taurus moon goddess. And yeah, and I also, on occasion, we've kind of fallen off the bandwagon a little bit, but I have a podcast that I do with my buddy Romy called Moon Mysteries, where essentially we look at the moon from multiple different angles. What is a conspiracy theory about the moon, and like, let's talk about it. And what are some mythologies from different cultures about the moon, and we'll talk about it. And like, what is the moon in astrology from this school of astrology? So there's so much to talk about with this one weird friggin' thing in the sky that we're having fun with it. So we kind of alternate. We'll do like one episode where we're talking about mythology and poetry and stuff, and then another episode where we'll bring in somebody that has written something or done some studies about the moon, and we'll interview them. So it's lots of fun. That's called Moon Mysteries, and I'm pretty sure you can find that on just about every podcasting place that exists, like Podbean and stuff. Yeah.
Nice. And Romy's always got a nice energy that he brings, very chill vibes. So
he's such a sweetheart.
Cool. That's a cool collaboration there.
Yeah, it's fun.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I got going on right now. Yeah.
Right on. Well, cool. I'm so happy that we got to do this and had a conversation. This is super fun. People in the chat have been loving it too. Very interactive tonight. So that's been really cool. And yeah, just thank you so much for doing all you do. And thanks for being a friend. And again, as I said in the beginning, very grateful to know you and just love all the things that you bring. And you're just a wonderful person. So keep on trucking, my lady. You're doing good work.
Thanks.
It's really cool to see. And yeah, it was really nice to just get more insight too, hear little stories that I haven't heard before. And yeah, it's super fun. So with that, I'll let you go. I might have a couple updates. I couldn't upload my file tonight. So yeah, I can just maybe run through a couple things. But otherwise, I will let you go and I won't hold on to you. But we'll see you real soon.
Yeah. Bye.
All right. See ya. All righty, everybody. Well, that was another fun one on the books. I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but because our internet is so slow, I don't know if it'll upload or if I'll be able to show it. I might not be able to, but regardless, I'll just talk to you right here. Next week's show, I'm going to have Joshua the Branch on, and we're going to talk about biblical plants. Now, he posed this idea and I loved it because I am not a person that's very well versed in the Bible, but I do know that plants and herbs play a huge role in the Bible. And there's a lot of plants that have a lot of really interesting lore that is tied to the biblical times and all sorts of really cool connections. My biggest connection with this is through cannabis, and it being in the Bible and it being a part of like all the holy anointing oils that were used and stuff like that. But so it's actually going to be me, Mario, and Joshua next week, which is going to be on April 4th. At 4 p.m. right here at the Healing Home. So we're going to go into that stuff. And I'm really excited. And I'm really grateful that he actually posed this idea because otherwise I don't think I would have thought of it. So shout out to Joshua the Branch. Again, you can come and hang out with Mario and I this Thursday. We're going to do another episode of last Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here at the Healing Home. I have kind of a lot of the same offerings that I typically have every week. So if you're looking to get something, place an order, maybe schedule a consultation with me, you can do that at my website. So michelleshealinghome.com. You can also email me, michelleshealinghome@gmail.com. And yeah, I think that's all the updates anyway. So without the slides, I was able to throw it down and let you guys know what's going on. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode and I look forward to the next week that we can all connect. And with all that said, enjoy your evening and I'll see you guys all real soon. Take care.